Continue now at the top of Daf Chav Gimel Amud Aleph and Meseches Rosh Hashana. This is Rosh Hashana Daf 23a. The Gemara says that if we would light fires for both kinds of Rosh Chodesh, whether Rosh Chodesh falls out on day number 30 or whether it falls out on day 31, you're going to end up making a mistake. In other words, the point is, let's say you have a situation where Rosh Chodesh really was on Friday and you needed to light the fires on Friday night. Of course, you can't light it on Friday night, so you light it instead on Saturday night. So then there's going to be a confusion. Are we lighting it on Saturday night because Rosh Chodesh was on Shabbos, was on day number 31? Or are we lighting on Saturday night because really Rosh Chodesh was on Friday on day number 30 and we weren't able to light it on Friday night? And so that's what the Gemara says. Amri hay chaser hu v'haydelo oven me'asmol mishum delefshar. They'll say maybe this month was really a month that was chaser and Rosh Chodesh was on 30 and they just didn't light yesterday because it was impossible. O Dilmor maybe, Malehu, maybe it was a full month. Uvizmanu avdo, and they're lighting Saturday night and it's the proper time and really Rosh Chodesh was on Shabbos, was on day number 31. And so that's what we do is we always light for the chaser and we don't light when it's a chodesh mole. And the Gemara continues, "V'liavid beina mole beina chaser." So why don't we do like this? Why don't we light whether it's a chodesh mole, whether it's a chodesh chaser? V'chi mikla Rosh Chodesh berev Shabbos. And if you have a situation where Rosh Chodesh falls on Friday, lo liavid klal, just don't do anything at all. V'keven de lo avdin on Motzei Shabbos. And so since we didn't light on Motzei Shabbos, v'avdin on mole, but normally we would do it on mole. So meida yadi de chaseru. So people will realize that it was a month that was chaser. That's why we didn't light it all. And so the Gemara says, no, that's also going to get confusing. Afilu hachi, nevertheless, asul limiti, they're going to make a mistake. Amri, they'll say, hi mole, who really was a chodesh mole, v'haydelo avdi snusei, and maybe they just didn't light the fires because some kind of accident happened, so people still are not going to be sure. It's better that we only light on chaser, and we don't light on mole at all. And so the Gemara continues, why don't we do the other way around? Why don't we only light the fires if Rosh Chodesh is on day number 31 on a mole month, and we shouldn't light the fires if it's in a chaser month, if it's Rosh Chodesh on the day number 30? And so to that, the Gemara says, Amar Abaya says, Mishum bittul melacha liam shnei yomim, because there was a custom that you wouldn't do work on Rosh Chodesh. So therefore, if you have a situation where it's a Chodesh chaser and you let people know right away, so then they're going to have that they're only not going to do work one day, and the second day they'll know it's not Rosh Chodesh, and they'll be able to work that day. But if you do it the other way around, if you only light the fires when it's a Chodesh Male, so people are going to abstain from work the first day because they're not going to know whether it's Rosh Chodesh or not. And then, of course, if it does end up being a Male, they're going to have Bittul Malacha for 2 straight days. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. So it's better to let people know right away if it's a Chodesh Chaser. If Rosh Chodesh is on day number 30, then they'll know they only have to abstain from work from one day, rather than doing it always on day number 31, in which case you'll have a situation where people will end up refraining from work really for no reason for 2 straight days. We'll take a look at Rashi over here. Amar Abaya mishum bittul malocha v'lo garsin gezeira i'amrit ni'avet amoli v'lo achaser. If you say that we're going to do it on mole months, that we're going to light the fires, and not on chaser months, meaning for situations where Rosh Chodesh is on day 31 and not day 30, so ein lach Rosh Hashana shein misbadlin b'nei hagola v'malacha shnei yamim. You're never going to have a Rosh Hashana where people from the diaspora aren't bottled from work for 2 straight days. Yom La'amid Shema Hayom Rosh Hashana. The 30th day, maybe today is Rosh Hashana. V'Yom Shloshim V'Echad Shema Ivru Es HaChodesh. And then 31st day, maybe it's not. Maybe it was a leap month, and really the second day is Rosh Hashana. V'Hayom Rosh Hashana. The second day is Rosh Hashana. Aval Ki Avdinan Masu Es HaChaser L'Or Yom La'amid. But if you're going to light the fires for a chaser situation on the night of the 30th, so Yadi Shabiyom Shloshim Nikva, everybody's going to know that it was on day 30 that was Rosh Hashana. V'Yasum Malacha L'Machar, and they'll be able to do work the next day. They're only going to be taking 2 days off of work when you have a situation of a ma'uber, when you have a situation where Rosh Hashanah is on day 31. It's interesting to note, Rashi understands this line as referring specifically to Rosh Hashanah. Other Rishonim disagree with Rashi and say there's a minhag not to do malach on all Rosh Chodeshim, on all Rosh Chodesh, and therefore the Gemara is not only talking about Rosh Hashanah, it's talking about any Rosh Chodesh where we're concerned that people won't work for 2 consecutive days. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots, quoting the Mishnah, Keyu Masi and Masuos, Mevi and Klunsos v'chulu. It said how would they light the bonfires, and the Mishnah identified several kinds of wood that they would light the fire with. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yehuda, Rav Yehuda says, Dalid mine arozim hein. There are 4 kinds of cedar wood. The first one is erez, which is what we know as cedar wood. Katrom will be talked about in the Gemara. Eitz shemen, sometimes this is translated as olive tree. Sometimes it's translated as pine wood. Uverosh, and finally cypress wood. And so the Gemara now says, Katrom, what is this Katrom? Amar Rav says Adra, it refers to a tree called Adra. Devei Rabbi Shila Amri Mavliga. In the yeshiva of Rabbi Shela, they say it's Mavliga. V'amri la zu gulmish. And some people say that Katram refers to a kind of a tree called gulmish. The Gemara continues, Upliga de Rabba bar Rav Huna. This argues with Rabba bar Rav Huna, meaning this idea that there are 4 kinds of arozim. It argues with what Rabba bar Rav Huna says. Diyama Rabba bar Rav Huna Amri bei Rav, because Rabba bar Rav Huna said that they said in the yeshiva of Rav, Asara mine arozim heim. There are 10 kinds of cedar wood. Shenemar, like the pasuk itself says, attained by midbar eres shita of hadas ve'etz shem and osim ba'rava barosh tidor usa'ashor yachtav. And now the Gemara goes on to explain what each kind of wood is. Erez arza, erez refers to cedar wood. Shita tornisa, shita refers to acacia wood. Hadas osa, hadas refers to myrtle. Eitz shemen afarsama, eitz shemen refers to afarsama, and that refers to the pine tree. Barosh barta, barosh refers to cypress. Tidhar is shaga, that refers to the maple wood. And tashor shorvina, tashor, that refers to the box tree. And the Gemara asks, Hani Shivahav, if you count that out, that's only 7 kinds of arozim. We said there are 10 kinds. So Kiyasa Rav Dimi, so when Rav Dimi came, Omar, he said, Hosifu aleim alonim, almonim, almogin. We add upon them 3 other kinds of trees, the alonim, the almonim, and the almogin. And the Gemara explains as follows. Alonim is butmi, that refers to a tree called the terebinth tree. Almonim belute, almonim, that refers to the oak. And almogin kisisa, almogin, that refers to the coral. Ika diamri, there are those who have a different version. Aronim, armonim, almogin. The Gemara explains aronim, ori, aronim refers to the bay tree. Armonim, dulvi, armonim refers to the plain tree. And almogin, kasisa, and again, almogin refers to the coral. The Gemara continues, quoting a pasuk in Yeshayahu that's relevant to coral. V'tzi ader lo yavirenu. It says that this ship called the Tzi Ader will not be able to cross this stream. Rashi over here says, V'tzi ader lo yavirenu l'nachal she'asid lotzes mi beis hamikdash. It's talking about a prophecy that in the future there's going to be a stream coming out from the Beis HaMikdash. It's going to be so powerful that this large ship is not going to be able to pass through it. Amar Rav, and Rav says, Zuburni Gedola. This refers again to a very large ship. And the Gemara continues and explains, Hechi Avdu, how do they use these ships in order to get the coral from the sea? Maisu Shis Alfe Gavri Betreser Yarchi Shasa. They brought 6,000 men who worked over a period of 12 months. V'amrilo Treser Alfe Gavri. Some people have the version it was 12,000 men. Beshisa Yarchi Shasa, who worked over a period of 6 months. V'tani lachala ad shachnas v'nachis. And then they would load up the ship with sand, make it heavy until it sunk into the sea. Bara moroi v'kater atuni dechisna b'chasisa. Then the diver would go in and tie flax ropes around the coral. V'kater lehu b'svinta, and tie the other end to the ship. V'notli chala v'shada livroi. And then they would start removing the sand that was weighing down the ships, and it would start to rise. V'kamad medalya okro masya. And again it would rise up and it would pull the coral from the sea. Umachlif al chad train b'chaspa, and they would be able to exchange this coral. It was so valuable, they would exchange it for twice its weight in silver. Tlaz Parvasa Havin, the Gemara says there were 3 ports. Tarti Bei Armoi v'choded Bei Parsoi. There were 2 ports that were by the Romans, and there was 1 port that was by the Persians. Devei Armoi Maskan Kasisa. In the ports that were by the Romans, they would bring up this coral. Devei Parsoi Maskan Marganaisa. And in the Persian one, they would bring up pearls. Umekaria Parvasa de Mashmig. And they used to call the one from the Persians, they used to call it the royal port. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Kol shita v'shita shenatlu nachrim Yerushalayim. Every acacia wood tree that was taken by the non-Jews from Yerushalayim, Asir HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'achziron, in the future HaKadosh Baruch Hu will return it to Yerushalayim. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, attained by midbar erez shita, it says it's going to put in the wilderness these trees. Ve'en midbar al Yerushalayim, and in this pasuk the word midbar actually refers to Yerushalayim. Shenemar, like there's another pasuk that says, Tzion midbar haisa, Tzion was a midbar, so again you see it's a reference here to Yerushalayim. The trees that were taken will be returned to Yerushalayim. And the Gemara continues, V'yomer Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan says, Kol halomei Torah ve'eino malamda, anybody who learns Torah but doesn't teach Torah, doma lahadas b'midbar, similar to a myrtle that's in the wilderness, meaning it has a very pleasant fragrance, but no one is there to enjoy it. That's the same idea. The person learns the Torah, doesn't teach it. Ika diamri, some people have a different version. Kol halomei Torah malamda b'makom shein talmidei chachamim. Anybody who learns Torah and teaches it in a place where there are not a lot of talmidei chachamim, there's not a lot of people who are able to teach. Doma lahadas b'midbar, Midbar is similar to a myrtle in the wilderness, to chaviv, meaning it's very beloved. In other words, somebody who does find it in the wilderness, very hard to find these things in the wilderness, so that's very beloved. So the same thing over here. If someone teaches Torah in an area where it's difficult to find Torah, that is especially precious. And the Gemara continues, V'yomer Reb Yochanan, and Reb Yochanan says, Oy lahem lovdei kochavim, woe is to the idol worshippers. She'ein lahem takana, they have nothing to fix their sins. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, Tachas hanachoshes avizav, instead of the copper I will bring gold. V'tachas habarzel avikesev, instead of the iron I will bring silver. V'tachas ha'etzim nechoshes, instead of the wood I can bring copper. V'tachas ha'avonim barzel, instead of the stones I'll bring iron. Meaning everything is replaceable in one way or another. However, Tachas Rabbi Akiva v'chaveirav, but what is there to bring instead of Rabbi Akiva and his friends, meaning those who the idol worshippers put to death? Ma'im mevi'in, what can we bring to replace them? Nothing. V'aleim u'omer, and it's about them that the pasuk says, V'nikesi domam lo nikesi. When it comes to blood, you can't be innocent from spilling blood. All other things you can be proclaimed innocent, you can atone for, but the blood you can't make up for that. And the Gemara continues at the Tudat, so me'ayin hayu masiyin masuos mi base built-in. It says they light these fires, and then it talks about a place called base built-in. My base built-in, what is base built-in? Amar Rav says, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chav Gimel Amud Beis.